What happens when two of television's most respected personalities collide in a heated exchange that changes everything? Today we're diving into the explosive confrontation that rocked the television world and left viewers absolutely stunned. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what actually went down behind the scenes of this shocking encounter. The studio lights were blazing hot that morning as Robin Roberts prepared for what she thought would be a routine guest appearance on The View. Having built her reputation as one of the most professional and beloved figures in television journalism, Robin had always maintained her composure even in the most challenging situations. But nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold on that fateful day. "Robin, it's so wonderful to have you here," Whoopi Goldberg said warmly as the cameras began rolling. The audience applauded enthusiastically, clearly excited to see the Good Morning America anchor in a different setting. Robin smiled graciously, settling into the familiar rhythm of television banter. "Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here with you all," Robin responded, her trademark warmth radiating through the screen. The conversation started smoothly enough. They discussed Robin's latest projects, her incredible journey in journalism, and her inspiring personal story of overcoming health challenges. The audience was engaged, the other co-hosts were supportive, and everything seemed to be going perfectly according to plan. But then Joy Behar decided to steer the conversation in a completely different direction. "Robin, I have to ask you about something," Joy said, her tone shifting noticeably. "There's been a lot of talk lately about journalistic integrity and whether morning show hosts are really journalists or just entertainers." The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Robin's smile faltered slightly, but she maintained her professional composure. "Well, Joy, I think that's an interesting question. I've always believed that good journalism can be both informative and engaging. But don't you think there's a difference?" Joy pressed, her voice taking on an edge that made the other co-hosts shift uncomfortably in their seats. "I mean, when you're doing those feel-good segments and celebrity interviews, are you really practicing journalism, or are you just playing a character?" The studio fell silent. Even the production crew seemed to sense that something was about to go very wrong. Robin's eyes flashed with something that viewers had never seen before, a mixture of hurt and growing anger. "Joy, I'm not sure I understand what you're implying," Robin said carefully, her voice measured, but with an unmistakable tension beneath the surface. "I'm not implying anything," Joy shot back, leaning forward in her chair. "I'm asking directly. Do you consider yourself a real journalist? Or are you more of a television personality who happens to read the news?" The other co-hosts exchanged worried glances. Sunny Hostin cleared her throat as if to interject, but Joy wasn't finished. The atmosphere in the studio had completely shifted, and viewers at home could feel the tension building through their screens. "You know what, Joy?" Robin said, her voice still controlled but with steel creeping into her tone. "I've covered hurricanes, I've interviewed presidents, I've reported from war zones, and I've broken major news stories. My journalism credentials speak for themselves." "Oh, please," Joy scoffed, rolling her eyes in a gesture that would become infamous in the coming hours. "Anyone can stand in front of a camera during a hurricane. That doesn't make you Edward R. Murrow." The comparison was deliberately provocative, and everyone in the studio knew it. Robin's face flushed, but she took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain her professionalism in the face of what was becoming an increasingly hostile interrogation. "Joy, I'm not sure why you're being so confrontational," Robin said, her voice remaining steady despite the obvious provocation. "We're supposed to be having a friendly conversation here." "I'm not being confrontational," Joy replied with false innocence, though her body language suggested otherwise. "I'm just asking the tough questions that other people are afraid to ask. Isn't that what real journalists do?" The irony of Joy's statement wasn't lost on anyone watching. Here was someone who had built her career primarily as a comedian and talk show host, questioning the journalistic credentials of someone who had actually worked as a correspondent and anchor for decades. "You're absolutely right that real journalists ask tough questions," Robin responded, her composure beginning to crack slightly. But there's a difference between asking tough questions and being deliberately disrespectful to a guest. Joy laughed, a sound that came across as both dismissive and condescending. Oh, so now asking about your qualifications is disrespectful? That's interesting coming from someone who supposedly values journalistic integrity. The tension in the studio was now palpable. The audience had gone completely silent, sensing that they were witnessing something unprecedented. The other co-hosts looked like they wanted to disappear, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. "Joy, I think we should move on to something else," Whoopi finally interjected. But Joy wasn't ready to let it go. "No, I think this is important. The viewers deserve to know whether the people delivering their news are qualified to do so." "And what exactly makes you qualified to determine that?" Robin asked, her professional mask finally beginning to slip. The question was delivered with such quiet intensity that it sent a chill through the studio. Joy's eyes narrowed. She had pushed Robin to this point deliberately, and now she was ready to deliver what she clearly thought would be the knockout blow. "Well, unlike some people, I don't pretend to be something I'm not." The words hit their target perfectly. Robin's composure, which had been hanging by a thread, finally snapped completely. Robin's eyes blazed with an intensity that no one in that studio had ever seen before. The woman who had faced down hurricanes and interviewed world leaders was about to show Joy Behar exactly what she was made of. "Pretend to be something I'm not?" Robin repeated slowly, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. "Joy, let me tell you exactly what I am. I'm someone who has earned every single thing I have through hard work, dedication, and actual journalistic experience." The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Even the cameras seemed to zoom in instinctively, sensing that they were capturing television history in the making. Joy, clearly not expecting such a strong response, tried to backtrack slightly. "Robin, I didn't mean to suggest." "No, you did mean to suggest it," Robin interrupted, her voice rising with controlled anger. "You meant to sit here, on national television, and question my credentials while positioning yourself as some kind of authority on journalism. So, let's talk about qualifications, shall we?" The other co-hosts sat frozen, clearly unsure whether to intervene or let this play out. The audience was completely silent, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. "I started my career as a sports reporter when women weren't welcome in locker rooms," Robin continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I covered the Gulf War. I reported from ground zero after 9/11. I've interviewed every president for the past 20 years. What exactly have you done, Joy, besides make jokes and stir up controversy?" Joy's face flushed red. "I've been on television for decades, and I've built a successful career." "Making people laugh," Robin cut her off. "Which is fine, Joy. Comedy is a legitimate profession. But don't sit there and act like you're some kind of journalistic authority when your biggest accomplishment is getting kicked off a show for making inappropriate comments." The reference hit like a lightning bolt. Joy's mouth fell open, clearly not expecting Robin to go there. The other co-hosts looked absolutely mortified. "How dare you bring that up?" Joy sputtered, her own composure now completely shattered. "How dare I?" Robin laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "You've spent the last 10 minutes trying to tear down my reputation and questioning my integrity. And you're upset that I'm pointing out facts about your own career?" Joy stood up abruptly, her chair rolling back dramatically. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this." "Actually, you do," Robin said, also rising to her feet. "Because this is your show, Joy. You started this conversation, and now you're going to finish it. You want to talk about journalistic integrity? Let's talk about the integrity of ambushing a guest with personal attacks disguised as questions." The tension in the room was electric. Two powerful women stood facing each other across the table, both clearly past the point of no return. The cameras captured every moment, every expression, every word that would soon be replayed millions of times across social media. "I was asking legitimate questions," Joy insisted, her voice shaking with anger. "No, you were being a bully," Robin fired back. "And the worst kind of bully, one who hides behind the pretense of journalism to justify their behavior. You've made a career out of tearing other people down, and for some reason, you thought I was going to sit here quietly and let you do it to me." Whoopi finally found her voice. "Ladies, I think we need to take a breath here." But neither woman was listening to anyone else in the room. They were locked in a battle of wills that had been building from the moment Joy made her first snide comment. "You know what your problem is, Robin?" Joy said, pointing an accusatory finger across the table. "You think you're better than everyone else. You walk around with this perfect image, but underneath it all, you're just as petty as the rest of us." "My problem?" Robin laughed incredulously. "Joy, my problem is that I came here as a guest, expecting to have a professional conversation. And instead, I walked into an ambush orchestrated by someone who clearly has some kind of personal issue with me." "I don't have a personal issue with you," Joy protested, though her body language suggested otherwise. "Really?" Robin raised an eyebrow. "Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you have a very personal issue with successful women who haven't had to resort to controversy and mean-spirited humor to build their careers." The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Joy's face went through a range of emotions: shock, hurt, and finally, rage. "You self-righteous," Joy started to say. But Robin wasn't finished. "I'm self-righteous?" Robin interrupted. "Joy, you've built an entire career on being controversial and divisive. You say things specifically to get a reaction. And then when someone calls you on it, you act like you're the victim. Well, today, you picked the wrong target." The other co-hosts were now actively trying to get control of the situation. Sunny was making cutting motions to the producers. Sarah was trying to get Joy to sit down. And Whoopi was attempting to restore order. But the damage was already done. The two women stood glaring at each other, both breathing heavily, both clearly past the point where this could be smoothed over with a commercial break and some behind-the-scenes diplomacy. "You know what, Robin?" Joy said, her voice dripping with venom. "I think it's time for you to leave. This is my show, and I don't have to tolerate this kind of behavior from a guest." Robin's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Your show? Joy, this show belongs to all of you, not just you. But you're absolutely right about one thing. I don't have to tolerate this behavior either. And I won't. I won't." She began to remove her microphone, her movements deliberate and controlled, despite the obvious anger radiating from her every gesture. "Where do you think you're going?" Joy demanded. "I'm leaving," Robin said simply, "because unlike you, I have too much respect for myself and for the viewers to continue this circus act that you seem to think passes for television." The studio erupted into chaos as Robin began walking toward the exit, her dignity intact despite the explosive confrontation that had just taken place. The production assistants scrambled as Robin Roberts walked purposefully toward the studio exit, her microphone pack already disconnected and left on the table behind her. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of what was quickly becoming one of the most talked-about moments in daytime television history. "Robin, wait," Whoopi called out, rising from her seat. "Let's just take a moment here." But Robin had made her decision. She turned back to face the panel one final time, her composure regained, but her resolve absolutely unshakable. "Whoopi, I have nothing but respect for you in this show," Robin said, her voice carrying across the silent studio. "But I won't be treated with disrespect by someone who clearly has her own agenda." Joy wanted to make this personal, and she succeeded. Joy, still standing behind the table, seemed to realize that she had pushed things too far. Her face showed a mixture of defiance and growing panic as she watched one of television's most respected figures prepare to walk out of her show. "Robin, you're being overly dramatic," Joy said, trying to regain control of the narrative. "Can't you take a little criticism?" Robin stopped in her tracks. The question seemed to reignite the fire that had been building throughout the entire confrontation. "Criticism?" Robin turned around slowly. "Joy, there's a difference between criticism and character assassination. What you did here today wasn't journalism. It wasn't even good television. It was just mean-spirited and unprofessional." The audience, which had been silent throughout most of the confrontation, began to murmur among themselves. Some were clearly uncomfortable with what they were witnessing, while others seemed to be taking sides in this unprecedented battle. "I stand by everything I said," Joy declared, crossing her arms defensively. "The viewers deserve to know about the people who deliver their news. And they deserve better than this," Robin shot back. "They deserve hosts who treat their guests with basic human decency, not someone who uses her platform to settle personal scores." Sarah Haynes finally found her voice. "Maybe we should all just take a step back and—" "No," Robin said firmly. "There's no stepping back from this. Joy made it clear from the moment I sat down that she had no intention of having a respectful conversation. She came into this with an agenda, and she executed it perfectly." Joy's defensive posture began to crack slightly. "I was just asking questions that needed to be asked." "By who?" Robin demanded. "Who exactly appointed you the arbiter of journalistic integrity? Because last I checked, your background is in comedy, not journalism. You've never worked a beat, you've never broken a major story, you've never done any of the things you're questioning me about." The words hit their mark. Joy's face flushed again, and for the first time since the confrontation began, she seemed genuinely rattled. "I've been in television longer than you have," Joy said weakly. "Being on television isn't the same as being a journalist," Robin replied. "And attacking your guests isn't the same as asking tough questions. What you did today was playground behavior dressed up as professional inquiry." Whoopi made one more attempt to salvage the situation. "Robin, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. Maybe we can work this out." Robin's expression softened slightly when she looked at Whoopi, clearly distinguishing between her and Joy. "Whoopi, I appreciate that. I really do. But some things can't be worked out with a commercial break and an apology. What happened here today was deliberate and calculated." She turned back to Joy one final time. "You wanted to make a point, Joy. Well, you made it. You showed everyone exactly who you are and what this show has become under your influence. Congratulations." Joy's mouth opened and closed several times, clearly struggling to find a response that would salvage her position. "You can't just walk out in the middle of a show." "Watch me," Robin said simply. The exchange that followed would be replayed countless times across social media and news programs. Robin Roberts, one of the most respected figures in television journalism, standing her ground against what she clearly saw as unprofessional bullying. "This is ridiculous," Joy said, her voice rising with desperation. "You're acting like a child." "Joy." Robin's laugh was sharp and bitter. "I'm acting like someone who refuses to be disrespected on national television. If that makes me a child, then I'm proud to be childish." The production crew was now clearly in panic mode. Producers were frantically gesturing from behind the cameras, trying to figure out how to handle a situation that had spiraled completely out of control. "Joy, maybe you should apologize," Sunny suggested quietly, clearly trying to find a way to de-escalate the situation. "I'm not apologizing for asking legitimate questions," Joy snapped, her defiance intact despite the obvious disaster unfolding around her. "Then we have nothing more to discuss," Robin said with finality. "Ladies, thank you for your time. Joy, good luck explaining this to your viewers." As Robin walked toward the exit, Joy made one final, desperate attempt to regain control. You'll never be invited back on this show again." Robin paused at the studio door and looked back with a smile that was both sad and knowing. "Joy, after today, I wouldn't come back if you begged me. Some bridges are meant to be burned." The studio door closed behind Robin Roberts with a soft click that seemed to echo through the silent studio like a gunshot. The remaining co-hosts sat in stunned silence, the weight of what had just happened settling over them like a heavy blanket. Joy stood alone behind the table, her defiance finally cracking as the reality of the situation hit her. She had pushed one of television's most beloved figures to the breaking point, and she had done it in front of millions of viewers who would now judge her actions for themselves. The cameras finally stopped rolling, but the damage was done. In the span of less than 30 minutes, Joy Behar had managed to create one of the most controversial moments in daytime television history, and not in a good way. What do you think about Joy's behavior during this confrontation?